is so much partial information coming from so many people that most of them have no idea what they're talking about. We're going to set it straight. We have to set the record straight on this, from the old information, the new information, on who the media is hailing as the Maryland man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was just deported to El Salvador.
Maryland man Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador.
A Maryland man mistakenly deported to a prison in El Salvador, refusing to return a Maryland man who was wrongly deported.
Well, not exactly wrongly deported, and not just a Maryland man and a father. Yes, he was residing in Maryland, and yes, he is a father, but here is why he was deported, not wrongfully. Because first, he was here illegally, with a deportation order already. That should be the end of this conversation. But since the media doesn't like to accept that, let's make them feel even more constitutionally and legally illiterate here. The media has been claiming that Garcia is not a member of MS-13. That's what they got.
The White House insists Abrego Garcia is a violent gang member, even though he has not been criminally convicted in the U.S. or El Salvador.
Without providing the proof, he has not been convicted or charged, although there was an informant saying that he was a member of the MS-13 gang in 2019. He has denied that.
Is Kilmar Abrego Garcia an MS-13 gang member, as the government alleges, or a father, a loving father, as his lawyer has talked about?
We've never seen any evidence presented in court that connected him to MS-13 or to committing any kind of violent crime.
Actually, there's a ton of evidence. This is just the media. They just say stuff. They don't bother to do their research. They trumpet talking points. And if they're wrong, they don't care because there's no consequences other than CNN completely being in a dumpster on their ratings. It says right here in the court docs from his original arrest in 2019, quote, subject has been identified as a member active of the MS-13 gang. But I'll get to why. The one thing they think they have for saying that he's not a gang member, I'll get to that in just a sec. Hold on. Let's review Garcia's arrest record in 2019, shall we? Okay. So when he was arrested by the local gang unit, they monitor gangs. He was currently with multiple known MS-13 gang members wearing MS-13 gang colors, and a confidential source confirmed to law enforcement that he was an active member in the gang, provided his rank and moniker in the organization. If it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, if it dresses like a duck, and it hanging out with other ducks, it's probably a duck. But the talking point that the left is clinging to is that the recent appellate judge, Judge Thacker, in the Fourth Circuit Court, important to note that she was appointed by Barack Obama, said, quote, even the government's evidence of any connection between Abrego Garcia and MS-13 was thin, to say the least. The government's claim was based on, one, Abrego Garcia was wearing a Chicago's Bulls hat and a hoodie, and two, a vague, uncorroborated allegation from a confidential informant claiming he was belonging to MS-13's Western clique in New York, a place where he has never lived. Right. The judge didn't even bother to mention the fact that he was with a ton of other MS-13 gang members when he was arrested. The description of the specific, not vague, specific rank and position in the gang corroborated by association, she said that was super vague. Judge, I mean, a big part of your job is case law. Just take a look at this. Less evidence has been used to send people to jail before, like in the case of People versus Vasquez. The evidence used for conviction of first-degree murder was the mere appearance of Jesse Vasquez wearing a blue bandana and oversized white T-shirt, and for having a, quote, shaved head with visible tattoos that might be affiliated with the gang. That was enough for a murder conviction, but even more evidence than that is not enough for a judge to merely admit that he was part of a gang. Okie dokie, we know what that judge believes. All right, but the real reason the American media and the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals and most of Democrats landed here is because, point blank, folks, they just got duped because of one simple sneaky little thing. His lawyer, Simon Sandoval Mogenberg, deliberately left out the arresting officer's statement about the gang involvement and other evidence totally out of the filing. And the judge refused to acknowledge any mention of it from the Justice Department when they were arguing it. So they didn't allow evidence into the case. On top of that, this judge has willfully ignored one other fact here from the judge's ruling. It said, quote, The United States government has no legal authority to snatch a person who is lawfully present in the United States off the street and remove him from the country without due process. Okay. Actually, he did have due process. Here is the 2019 deportation order that was his due process to be deported. So, no, Judge, he was not lawfully in the country, and he did get due process. But what's hilarious is that on top of all these things, all the evidence pointing that this guy should have been gone, none of that matters. And what seems to be lost on the libs here, fun fact, folks, even if none of that mattered, remember when Trump declared MS-13 and other gang as foreign terrorist organizations? Well, turns out when you give them that distinction, it's not just like for the media so they can report it. It's an actual legal distinction. One thing it does, it removes any claims for affiliates of those groups, any right to asylum, which is what Garcia lawyers are claiming now. And in addition to that authority, according to 8 U.S. Code 1158, Section B2, subsection A, paragraph 4, allows at the discretion of the Attorney General to deport them if there is reasonable grounds for regarding the alien as danger to the security of the United States. So Pam Bondi has the authority to consider whether or not, literally, she can determine whether she thinks he's part of MS-13, okay? That's her authority. So whether or not this guy is part of any gang, and she can bounce him to wherever she wants. The fact that he was formally associated with the gang is irrelevant, but also strengthens her case. These court issues, the rulings have no standing here. It should never have been in front of them in the first place. And before you say, oh, he was never convicted of being an MS-13 member. True, but he was identified by the gang unit in court documents and an arrest as part of that gang. Let me tell you why that also doesn't matter, though. Do you know what the criteria is for being part of this gang, which is now also declared a foreign terrorist organization? It's actually not a matter of due process. And that is according to 8 U.S. Code 1103A, Section 1. Quote, in any case in which the Attorney General has classified information that an alien is an alien terrorist, which this organization is, the Attorney General may seek removal of the alien under the subchapter by filing an application with the removal court that has already been filed in 2019. But this is the person that the media and the Democrats, one and the same, I guess, have chosen to defend. U.S. Code 8, 1583, Section C2. The judge shall, not may, the judge shall, means they have to, issue an order granting the application of the judge finds there is probable cause to believe that the alien who is the subject of the application, in this case Garcia, has been correctly identified, which nobody disputes his identity, and is an alien terrorist present in the United States, which he is because Pam Bondi declared him that under this designation. And since he already had a deportation order, again, asylum does not apply to foreign terrorist organizations, which he was associated with, because Pam Bondi said he was, and she has the authority to do that, in 2019. A further hearing was not necessary to send him back to El Salvador. Also because he was now declared as part of a foreign terrorist organization, he was no longer protected by the asylum that he's claiming to have had to not go back to El Salvador. Bye-bye. Like, this is a really complicated way of saying he has no chance of being here legally. But yet, this is where the Democrats have decided to plant their flag. None of these Democrats, none of them cared or took taxpayer-funded trips to Afghanistan when actual Americans who volunteered to fight for America were stuck over there. They didn't care. Joe Biden was checking his watch. None of those same Democrats went to Gaza to get actual American citizens taken hostage out of there. No. But the one United States senator and apparently 2 congressmen went down, and a ton of other Democrats supported them, to go down to El Salvador and try to get this guy, this illegal immigrant, back who was A, not a citizen, B, had a restraining order against him for beating up his wife, C, well-documented history of being part of a gang that is literally a terrorist organization, and D, had a deportation order. Oh my gosh. Meanwhile, not one of those people, the senator, the Democrat senator, in fact, didn't even acknowledge the mother of Rachel Morin, who was murdered by an illegal immigrant in his state Yet he's off to help this illegal guy, gang member, and, restraining order holder in El Salvador. How about helping your own state, where the murder rate in Baltimore was the second highest in the nation in 2023? No? No takers there? I mean, was anyone listening to Patty Morin yesterday?
Tell the truth. Yeah. Tell how violent it really is. This is about protecting our children. It's more than just politics or votes or just anything. It's about national security, protecting Americans, protecting our children.
That was her plea. Just tell the truth. And they can't do it. I mean, it's hard to imagine that our elections in this country are basically a 50-50 proposition. I mean, maybe next year they won't be.